Y'all, I am Hope here at Crafty Hope and welcome. I am working today on ICAD. That means Index Card a Day, and it is a 2-month challenge that comes from Tammy Garcia. The months were June and July, as they are every year, and it's basically a challenge to create every day on an index card. And I really enjoy this challenge because I really like working small and having that bit of a daily challenge. To help inspire you, Tammy offers up daily prompts and weekly themes, but they're not completely required to do this. Really, the whole challenge is about just creating every day for those 2 months. So I am sharing with y'all here my days 37, 38, and 39 of the 61-day challenge. In addition to Tammy's daily prompts, my friend Nina Fickett has what she calls mixed media ICAD, and she has additional prompts to help inspire you. Now, on this day 37, Tammy's prompt was dashboard and Nina's prompt was monochromatic colors. I am not using either one of those prompts on this day. They just weren't speaking to me. So to get started, I threw down some vintage papers. That's I don't know, it was like a little notepad somebody had written on, and then some antique newsprint that had all kinds of stuff on it. From there, I am putting down this solution it's a rust water that includes black tea and some rusty bits. So I brewed black tea and threw in some rusty bits in a jar and put it all in that jar. And it makes this like dark gray kind of inkiness. So I did some work making with that, and I'd been sitting in my fridge for months, and I just kind of I think after that, I disposed of it. So as you saw, I made some marks, dried it, moved it around, and now I am coming in with some Ranger opaque crackle paste. This is the Distress crackle paste. Y'all, I'm sorry if you can hear my dog. She's like 4 rooms away, and I bet there is a squirrel on our porch, and she is losing her mind. So I apologize if you can hear that. I am using like a frosting spreader, I believe. A palette knife or even a plastic knife would work just fine to do this. I wanted this to feel kind of grungy and organic, and so I am, just getting this crackle paste down. You can kind of tell my crackle paste is firming up inside the jar. This is one of the last times I think I actually use it because it's so stiff. So I've got it all over that. I left it to dry naturally for, I don't even know, probably at least an hour. And I came back, and you can see it makes this amazing crackle, but it does, it crackled to pieces. So I kind of just shook off some of those pieces. I think that worked great for that grungy effect I was going for. So yeah. And then I pulled out my little container. These are Tim Holtz Botanicals, which are a variety of different images, and found this butterfly, maybe it's a moth, I'm not sure, image that I liked. And then this is some rust dyed cheesecloth. I just trimmed off a little bit of excess. You can see this one came together super quick. Not all of my ICADs come together as quick as this one, but this one, I don't know, things were flowing for me. So I am going to ink up the edges of this butterfly with some walnut stain distress ink. That's another Tim Holtz product, just to kind of give it a little more of a grungy feel. What I kind of wish I had done is maybe rubbed a little bit of a sanding block over it. So I went and started sorting through a bunch of words I have cut out. I think what I ended up pulling out is this that says "Dare to Spread Your Wings." It is a stamped sentiment. Oh my gosh, y'all, I think it's either Delusions or Dina Wakley, I'm not sure, stamp that, it could be Finnabair. Actually, it could be a Finnabair one that I have. It's from a stamp set I have. I'm thinking it's the Finnabair one. Anyway, it just stamped on some cardstock, and I'm going to trim it down and then ink it up also with that same Distress ink and walnut stain. And you can see I've got sitting there upside down in my little holder is some Fabri-Tac that I'm going to use to stick all of this stuff down. So I'm going to move everything, no, maybe not move everything. I'm going to clear out the tip of that Fabri-Tac. It was a struggle all of ICAD. So I'll put some of the Fabri-Tac right on. See, it's still clogged, even though it's been sitting upside down all that time. Oh my gosh. So I'll put Fabri-Tac right on my card here in just a second. After I struggle with this, y'all, some days it's easier. Like the card itself came together easy, but it was my materials that were giving me the struggles. So I put the Fabri-Tac right on my card. I'm going to stick the cheesecloth on top, then put the Fabri-Tac on my butterfly and stick it down, and then Fabri-Tac on to that sentiment. And then I think I'm going to ink the edges of the card with more of that Distress ink so that, everything's got a little bit of a grunginess to it. Now, often I would accentuate the crackle with something else, but I don't think I'd do it with this one because this crackled so wonderfully. I don't think I needed it. So yeah, I'm going to stick that sentiment down and then ink all of the edges. I'm going to give you, once I finish this, I'm going to give you a quick look at this card, just a single photo, and then we'll get to card 38 next. But I'll have a bunch of pictures of all 3 of the cards I'm doing in this video at the end, so you can get some of the detail shots of all of it. So all right, I think that is it. I don't know if you can tell, but when I inked up the edges of that, I did try to go over just a little bit. And you can see I'm trying to get all that crackle off my desk before I give y'all a quick look at it. And I think that is it for this card. I don't know. I'm looking at it. What am I thinking about? What do I add? Oh, I decided, yes, I needed a little shadow to pop up that sentiment a little bit more. So I use my Stabilo All pencil and I'm activating that, which adds just a touch of shadow below that sentiment. That's what I did. I was like, I think I've got some black on there. Where did that come from? And then that is it. Okay, I'm going to give you a quick look. Card 38 had the prompts of Pac-Man and fine liner or fine tip mark making tool. So I showed you a gold one there real quick that I am going to use in a little bit. And the Pac-Man prompt, y'all, I struggled with that. I wasn't real sure exactly what I wanted to do with that. I played with an idea, didn't really work out, but I kind of fudge my way through it, I suppose. So again, I am going to collage. I don't think I mentioned it before, but my collage I'm doing with some fluid matte medium and it's a cosmetic mask spreader tool. Anyway, it works great because it's silicone and you can peel up. I have sped this up quite a bit, and what I'm collaging down here, y'all, it's a security envelope that I've jelly printed. So, but then I'm going to add some other scraps. I've got a bit of dictionary paper, and then that is some kind of like maybe origami paper, I think, that's got metallic accents and more of the blues in it and everything. Now, I'll admit that this card of these 3 is not my favorite. The other 2 I like a lot more, but this one's got some neat elements. Like I really like the colors of this. These are definitely my colors. These blues and purples are, yeah, definitely more of my jam. So I do trim off the excess a little bit. Sometimes I do that, sometimes I don't. It depends on how I'm feeling. And then I think I'm probably going to, am I going to dry this card? I'm not sure. Maybe I just stepped to the side. I don't remember. I know I just edited this so that I knew what was happening. Oh no, before I dry it, I decided to add some little bits of, this is a Tim Holtz tissue tape. And y'all, I love this tissue tape, but if I don't leave the edge sticking up, it takes forever to find it because it's so super thin, and I always have to be super careful. I don't even think they sell this anymore, but it is one of my favorite things because it's just so thin, and yeah, it's so thin and lovely. And it just, everything kind of, yeah, I don't know, kind of peeks out. And there's so much texture already on that that I don't know why I decided to add more with that tissue tape, but yeah, I just felt like I needed something. And that also helps stick some of these little bits of things down. Sorry for my pauses here. My husband's texting me right at the second that the termite guy is on his way, which means the dog will lose her mind again. Tempted to go put her up. Okay, so I got all of that tissue tape down, and now I'm going to dry my card. And I'm coming back in with some yellow ochre. I think that's Amsterdam acrylic ink. And that is a little bit of a nod to Pac-Man because, he's yellow, but I just couldn't bear to use like the super bright Pac-Man yellow. I'm also adding a touch of Distress ink. It's a re-inker. No, I think it's a Distress Oxide re-inker in Picket Fence. So I mix those together in a little palette and I'm doing some marks all over the page. I don't know. It is yellow, so it's got that Pac-Man-y feel. And I tried to dry it, but you'll see. You'll see. I'm going to dry it some more, added a few more marks, try to dry it. And then I'm coming in with that fine liner. Now, this is I can't even, I think I put some gold medium as well as gold medium and gold acrylic paint in this little tube that I am squeezing out all over the surface. I'm making they're almost like little flowers, but they're super sketchy on there. Just something to add a pop of gold. I don't know what the flowers had anything to do with either of the prompts, but yeah, I used the fine liner. That was one of the prompts. And of course, I'm going to dry it. This is a bit of Dynaflow ink, and I cannot remember what color I used. Maybe periwinkle, but it's a blue that I thought would go with some of the blues that are already on there from that like origami paper that I used. Okay, so I wet that down, and I think this Dynaflow ink is actually supposed to be for maybe fabric dyeing. I'm not sure. I found it at an Owl's 5 and Dime well before, I don't know, many years ago, and couldn't find any information on it, and I've just been using it as a regular ink. So I did splatter a little bit of that ink around just to kind of get it off my brush, and once again, I'll dry it. And I'm coming in with another fine liner bottle, and this one has a fluid black acrylic ink and some airbrush medium in it. And again, just that is actual just scribbles across it. Do y'all see how this is getting like crazy and wild and like I don't even know. Yeah. It's so busy, and I think that's probably one of my problems with it is that first card. Y'all saw how fast that went. I put down a little collage, a little crackle, and then threw everything. This one, I think I got in my head too much about the prompts. So I had originally pulled out that confetti paper punch to try to maybe make some Pac-Man shapes and decided pretty quickly that I did not care for that. So instead, I used it to punch out centrally this girl's image. I believe that was a free printable from Ricky of Ricky Tikki Tavi. So I punched her out and inked her edges and decided, okay, well, I don't have this walnut stain distress ink anywhere else on the card. So let me go ahead and ink the edges of the card. And once I get it inked, I'm going to look at her on there again. And I start picking up some of those other dots that came out. And was like, okay, well, I could put these on here as a pop of white to kind of, like a place to rest the eye where it's not so busy, So I placed those around on the card and decided, yeah, I think I'm going to use those. but I do decide to ink them up. I did ink up, the girl and everything. So yeah, I'm going to ink up these little dots as well, give them a little bit of grunge, but I still keep that super bright white in the center of them, which, like I said, is, I don't know, it gives some freshness to this card amidst all the busyness of it. So once I get that inked, I think I'm just going to use my Oohoo glue stick to glue down all of these little dots, or partial dots. And you can see some of those popped out when I punched them with straight edges on them because it was the side of the paper or whatever. And I just made sure I butted them up against the side of the card. And so that worked kind of perfectly that I didn't have to even trim them or anything. I just put them up against the side of the card. Yeah, so that one, I thought it might be neat to overlap onto the picture, but I changed my mind, and yeah, I was like, no, none of the others are overlapping, so I'm going to just leave those. And then from there, I pull out my small talk stickers and decide that a white sentiment to go with all those white dots would be really nice. So I pick out one that says "Hold tight and pretend it's a plan," which is kind of how I felt about this card. That it was a little bit all over the place, and just, I'm coming in and telling you that, yeah, Pac-Man, I totally plan to put that yellow down. Yeah, it was a plan all along. So I'm going to move it around a little bit till I find the right spot, and I'll add a little bit of Oohoo to the back of this sentiment before I stick it down as well. And then that'll be that card. So I will give you a quick look at it, and then we'll get to card number 39. This third card is day 39, and the two prompts were fringe and embossing powder. So there you can see some fringe I pulled out from my stash, and I will get the embossing powder out later. So for now, I'm going to start with I thought I was going to start with collage. I found this piece of typing paper, some thin typing paper, or paper that it's typing paper that's been typed on. So I found that in my stash, and because it is see-through, I didn't want to stick it down without adding something to the background. So I'm using some different water soluble crayons and pencils. So I've used a Acrylic crayon, a Stabilo Woody. That's a Stabilo all pencil in blue. What else am I going to pull out? Those are distress crayons. So just a variety of water reactive crayons and pencils. And I will use gesso. This is basic Liquitex Professionals white gesso and a wet paintbrush. And maybe it's not wet. I don't know. Anyway, I am going to basically activate those water soluble bits, and by using the gesso, that kind of locks it in. I could also have done that with a matte medium or a gel medium or a fluid, some kind of medium that would lock it in. But gesso works great. It also kind of pushes the color back a little bit to pushes the color back. And y'all, I have to admit, when I edited the pictures of this and looked at this card, I was like, I don't know what I used to get that color on this card. And when I edited it, I was like, oh, right, I love that. So I am bringing a little bit of the I think the orange Stabilo in there just to get a little bit of color variation in. So I will dry this, and then immediately, before I add that, I decided to give a little extra texture to the background because that paper that I'm going to stick over the top doesn't cover the whole card, basically. So I used a chunky pencil to do some scribbling, and then a black Stabilo all pencil to make just a couple marks. And you can see I'm using a wet pencil to activate the spell. And y'all, it's kind of rough paintbrush. Oh my gosh, where are my words? That I am kind of accentuating that because it's scraggly a bit. I let those marks kind of be scraggly as well. And then I realized I was getting super fussy about it for something that was just going to be in the background. So I made myself stop and go on with the collaging of this paper on here. So I am again using the fluid matte medium and that spreader tool. This time, this one in particular has like two sides to it. It has like, I don't know, one side's like a spatula you'd have in your kitchen, and the other side is like the spreader side. And this time I'm using the spatula-ish side. I don't know why. I don't know why. And I just did part of the card at a time. I'm trying to do it to try to keep any of the air bubbles out. And once I get it down, I am putting more of that fluid medium down over the top, and I'm going to use a paintbrush to help me spread it a little more thoroughly. And talk about a scraggly brush. This is my super scraggly one, which I use almost specifically for paints. Every once in a while, I'll use it with like a gesso, but yeah. So once that's dry, I'm going to go ahead and trim it. Yeah, it's just going to trim a lot better when it's dry as opposed to when it's wet. And what am I going to do next? I don't know. I think I'm going to add some walnut stain distress oxide. Yeah, I believe that's what that is. So I'm going to just do a couple squirts on there. Coffee would have worked just as well, but I do like the way that the distress oxides have like the pigment in them, and they have like some color variation that I wouldn't necessarily get with just my instant coffee. So that's funny. None of these three have I used my instant coffee. Y'all, that's crazy for me. I can't even believe that. I did spritz some water onto that distress oxide. You can see I'm moving it around. I left this in here while I was drying part of it so you could see how I kept turning the card to get it to layer on itself. So yeah, once it was dry, I'm going to look at the fringe for a minute. Spoiler, I'm not going to use this fringe. I'm going to leave it on my desk and try to play with it for a while. But it just, it wasn't going with the aged feel I had of this card. So yeah. So it was time to work with the embossing powder portion of this. I pulled out some distress oxide in black soot. One of my hand carved stencils. You can see this. I make them with erasers. This is a funky little one that kind of looks like a cog, maybe. And I can't even tell you why I chose this one. I think because it had plenty of surface area, and if I was going to put the embossing powder on there, I wanted to make sure I had a good portion of it. So once I stamp that, I am going to put my card on a folded piece of paper and then put the embossing powder down. I'm not even sure what embossing powder I used. I did try to make sure it wasn't one of the distress ones because I wanted the shine that you get from an embossing powder. And you can see I'm lightly brushing off some of the excess, but there's still little bits of that embossing powder that have stuck in additional areas on the card. I'm trying to keep this fairly grungy, so I wasn't super concerned, but I did want to get the bulk of that excess off because I didn't want it just to be one big blob. I wanted those shapes to kind of show up a little bit. And then I heated it. So again, you get to see me using my heat tool. And this time with embossing powders, it's basically like a powdered plastic. And when you stick it into that like adhesive ink or an ink that it'll stick to a wet ink, it'll stick there. And then as you heat it, it melts. And so I melted it till I could see the shine on it. And I'm going to try one more time to look at this fringe and futz with it for far too long. Yeah. And like you see, I threw it aside and was like, okay, let me think about that. So I go ahead and ink the edges again with more of that walnut stain distress ink. I can't believe I only used the walnut stain through this one. Sometimes I'll switch over and use the black soot for the edges, but I think because I had that walnut stain ink on there, it felt right. So I had recently picked up in a thrift haul this bag of like lacy goodies, and in it was this bit of fringy lace that I really love. So I was like, you know what, this will be perfect. And for some reason, I didn't want to put it like right at the bottom of the card or along the edges because I really wanted it to show up, and I felt like it did on the card. Like it popped a bit more on the card, and it gave that bit of white and freshness that I really wanted. So I turned again to my little tin of words, and this is another stamped word, and you can see it says wish. I'm going to ink the edges of it to get some of that brown on it as well. And I cut it out of the video, y'all, but when I pulled out my embossing powder box, there were a bunch of buttons that had fallen from higher up or had somehow fallen into that box and were sitting in there, these 3 buttons. So I just threw them on my desk and was like, okay, I'll put those up later. But since they were out, I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a button cluster and put them on this card. And they went perfectly because they were black. And then there's the one with the white on it, actually has like a brass edge to it. Yeah, and I thought these are kind of perfect. So I'm going to move them around a little bit while I'm waiting for my Fabri-Tac to move down the bottle. And then I'm going to just put a line of the Fabri-Tac right on my card and stick the fringe lace stuff right on it. Y'all, I love the texture so much that this fringy lace adds. It is delicious. I think I'll just use my Oohoo glue stick to stick this bit of cardstock down because I felt like Fabri-Tac was overkill for it. And then I'm going to pull out some thread and put it on a needle and knot it up and sew those 3 buttons on just super simply. I could have used the Fabri-Tac or an E6000 or something like that. But I do love, and I think for me, I love the motion and the feel of sewing something on. So yeah, and then also that little bit adds some texture. So what I like to do, especially when I'm sewing through like a surface like this that doesn't give, is to poke the holes from the front first so I can see on the back where I want there. Like poke that, and then I can go through and sew it on and turn it over and find that hole again. So I call it pre-poking my holes, and it works perfectly. So I think we are just about to, oh no, I've got one more thing I know I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna get this down. I'm gonna turn it over and tie a knot on the back. And yeah, I'm gonna get that tied on there, and I'm gonna start noticing that, of course, I put that button on there that has the brass edging on it, so it has a metallic element on it that is nowhere else on the card. And because I like things to be like fair and matchy and cohesive, I am going to come back with some distress spray stain in, I think it's antiqued brass or something like that. I'll put it below, and I'm just going to do some small splatters on the card to get that color around on the card. So you can see how tiny of a brush I'm using. This doesn't make a huge element on this card. You may not even see it in the pictures, but to me it made me feel better. So I'll dry that real quick, and then this card will be done. I'm going to give you looks at all 3 of these. And I can't decide. I told you I didn't really care for that second card, but the first and third card in this series, I love both of these so much. I think the grunginess and the crackle of the first one, and then this, I don't know, that bit of texture with the buttons on that last one. I can't decide which is my favorite. You let me know which is your favorite. Make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. All of those things help me out a ton. And let me know if you have any questions or comments or anything. I would love to hear from you. Thanks so much for spending this time with me, and I will see y'all later. Bye.